And the torque spec for these is 40 to 45, which is either a click on your torque wrench or slight wrist pain if you're over the age of 40. Let's go take a look. Welcome back to the channel. Yeah, it's not cold in the shop. The heat's working great, but it happened. I got the season changing cold. I'm kind of old school on the colds. I bundle up, put a stocking cap on. I do take some medicine, but anywho, we're gonna play with the FE series of Ford engines today. This is a 352. We're talking 360, 390, 292, there's a 261, something like that. You know what I'm talking about. But this is the FE, and the easiest way to tell these from the other Ford engines is the intake manifold actually comes over and splits down the middle of the what would normally be the cylinder head. So you have push rods that go through the intake down into the lifter valley. So this is a 352. Now you might have an FE, a 360, 390. We've got a couple different ones out here, and they just kind of smoke. That's the symptom we're diagnosing here. And this one didn't, but we're into this cleaning it up, putting valve covers on anyway. So I'm like, let's just do it now, because we know if we don't do it right away, we're going to be doing it sooner than later, especially on an old rig. This is on the 66 F250. Now, we're assuming that you've got a pretty decent running engine anyway, and you just got a kind of a consistent whisper of smoke. And more often than not, on these FEs, it's going to be the valve stem seals. Now, the valve stem seals are located inside of here, within the coil spring for the valve stem itself, and then they suck down over the crown of the valve guide. This is what they look like new. Notice how pliable, really soft. They're just rubber, nothing too fancy about them. But then we've already started on this. Here's the old one. I can't squeeze it at all. And that's usually what happens on our shop truck, the orange Ford F250. They were so bad, they've been in there so long that they were hard and they were crumbling and they were just disintegrating. And at that point, yeah, the engine just gets a little bit of oil past those valve guides and it'll just smoke all the time. Now, this is super easy to do in the truck or out of the truck or car for that matter. You just got to remove valve covers and then get your engine. I always start with top dead center and number one, so get the piston up in the on a Ford, number one cylinder over here. And then we look at our firing order, 1, 5, 4, 2, 6, 3, 7, 8. So at the opposite of number one is going to be 6. So that means number 1 and number 6 are both at the top of their stroke, both valves closed, and we'll get started with those 2 cylinders. The tool you need, other than the correct valve stem seals, is a part from any old generic compression tester. You need the hose with the quick coupler for your air hose, and then take the Schrader valve out of the center. And the reason we do that is once we get the cylinders at the top, we're going to go ahead and screw this into the spark plug hole and hook it to our air hose and put compressed air into the cylinder. That'll hold those valves shut while we take off the spring retainer and washer and the valve spring and then replace the seal. Now, once you've changed the valve stem seals on your first pair of cylinders, you've got 4 pairs. So 360 degrees divided by 4 is 90. Just get you I think it's 15/16 or 7/8 socket and a ratchet. Turn your engine 90 degrees, and that'll bring you to your second pair, which would be 5 and 3. And then after you do 5 and 3, another 90 degrees, you'll do 4 and 7. And then what we're on this particular engine is our last pair, which is 2 and 8. Number 2's here, number 8's the farthest one back on the driver's side. So let me get you onto a tripod and we'll get you kind of zoomed in here. We're gonna grab 2 and deal with that, and then we'll jump over, do 8, and we'll be done. Okay, I think we're all set up here. I went ahead and turned the engine about 90 degrees, and you can see with your naked eyeball, you can see the top of the piston there. And we do that so just in case for some reason we lose pressure in that cylinder, or say you go put the keepers back on and they aren't on right and things springy apart and the valve falls down in the cylinder, it can't go down to where you can't retrieve it in this setting. If it goes down into the cylinder all the way, well then of course you're going to be saying bad words and pulling cylinder heads. Now it's going to be a little loud because there will be some air getting past piston rings and stuff like that, and the compressor may kick on and off. But there we got pressure in our cylinder. Now on this particular engine, I know you've got the keepers are where this split is right here and right here, and they come out in 2 halves, and then around that is another conical washer that brings the keepers together and holds on to the big washer on the top of the valve spring. And I know that these are a little gunked up and they're sticking to the keepers. So before we start, we're going to do that. And you notice it popped once and now it hasn't. So that means that we broke that kind of stickiness between the two. We're going to do it on the intake side as well. That way when we compress these valve springs, we'll be able to get those keepers out a little bit easier. All right, we're going to use this style valve spring compressor, and we want to get it to where we have as many of the coils to compress as possible. Find your happy spot here. There we go. I'll turn it so you guys can kind of see a little more. As that's compressing, you can kind of see, there we just came loose between the keepers and that conical washer. And now we just got to keep going so we've got enough space for those 2 keepers to come out. And the next tools you need, and these are nothing you can't buy just about anywhere, is a little magnet and a pocket screwdriver. And we'll just start fishing for these little keepers. Now we may not be down far enough yet, so we'll give it another couple turns. You'll know when you start to get the full bind, when it's like, all right, we got to get this out of here now. Oh, almost. They're a little gooey and a little gunky. There we go. There's the first one. Get him up there, and then the second one will come out a lot nicer. No, there's only one. Well, maybe. There we go. There's the second one. Now, you simply pull your coil spring assembly off of there. Be very careful, just set it down real soft on a rag or something that won't jostle that spring in there, because if it goes springy, you're going to be chasing parts. Now here's a really excellent example of what these valve stem seals do. This is supposed to be, here's your seal right here, it's supposed to be down like that, and we had them all the way up here, so that's letting even more oil through here. But we can just then pop him off. We got some gunk in there, a bit of sludge, and then see, just hard as a rock. Clean off a valve guide with just a rag. You don't have to get too spectacular with things here. Make sure the stem's clean and the part where the seal goes down around is clean. Matt's happy. And we'll just take a little bit. I'm going to use assembly lube on there. Smear that smooth around. You don't want to rip your valve seal when you go back on your new one. Put the new valve seal. Twist. As you're spinning it on there, as you're pushing down, spin it. Push it down on there. Now we'll take our two keepers. Clean the inside of them out so we don't have any gunk that's going to keep our keeper groove from landing and holding where it's supposed to hold. And then back to our spring. Springy spring, it goes back on. One keeper in. Second keeper's in, and then when you get ready to release the spring, pull up, so that brings those keepers into that washer so everything stays happy. And you're just basically expanding that spring downward. There we go. Now the best way is to just eyeball it, compare it to the valve stems on either side. It looks like it's the same height, just to make sure everything's happy and those keepers are seated. We'll take a brass hammer, put a rag over that, hit it a few times, wipe off the top, and we'll do the other side. Now, if that happens, don't freak out. Everything's still together. Sometimes these little jaws on here get a little slippery. You just regroup and give her another shot here. Oh, that was kind of close. Well, I apologize. I'm a dingus. I forgot to tell you dudes and dudettes. There's one very integral part here that you got to take off to get to your valve springs and valve stem seals, and that is the rocker assembly. This one's already sitting over here, and this side is over on the tool bench. But before we get to that, we're going back together here. You've got baffles, and this is a pretty wise thing that Ford did back in the Dre. These are not specific side to side, but they go down in here. Well, if I can get it, there we go. And they bolt under the pedestals for the rocker shaft. But look, it directs the oil that comes out of the rocker shaft, it directs it back down and away from the valve stem seals under the valve springs. So this is very helpful, and yeah, don't forget to put that back in. Then we come in with our rocker shaft, plop it down on there, get a couple of these bolts. You can get just a thread or two started, and they'll be happy enough. And then you can come in and manipulate your way to getting all the push rods seated into the rocker arms. Now I've already drizzled these with the tips of the rocker arms and the tips of the valves with assembly lube. We just go in and kind of make sure the bottom ends are where we want them, and they are. So now we can just start hand tightening these. Now some dudes and dudettes might get on here with a zippy tool of some sort and just start going to town. I don't do that. I don't want to bend stuff or mar something. So we're just gonna take a few minutes longer to do this little step than the average Joe might. We're just going to come through, kind of evenly tighten these down, making sure that our push rods are in the pockets. That one's pretty much there. There. And the torque spec for these is 40 to 45, which is either a click on your torque wrench or slight wrist pain if you're over the age of 40. So we're going to split the difference and go 43. Do those first. The outside ones. And we're golden. Now we're getting ready to do our valve cover. The one thing on these, you have to do just a tickle bit of silicone at this seam where the intake meets the head on the front and the back. So now you're right back to where you were when you popped the valve cover off. And here's the surprises. You know, we're dressing this thing up. We aren't doing any internal work to it really, but we are sprucing things up a little bit since it's coming out and going back in. But check that bad right out. Okay, now you have your sun shades, glasses. Some eye protection is advised. We got her all buttoned up. We got our Edelbrock Signature Series valve covers. Again, she's a stalker. She's old. We aren't rebuilding. There's no cam, no nothing in here, but it's sure gonna look nice. And gosh dang it, that's okay. But yeah, we went with Felpro rubber gaskets. I like those batterized. I'll put a link down in the description to the part numbers for those, and then I'll put the part number for the Edelbrock valve covers down there as well for the FE. Everything went together just fine. Now this engine should not smoke at all once we get it running. I don't think this engine has any compression issues or isn't losing burning oil anywhere else. So once we get this thing back in the truck, it should run really well for a very long time. So thanks for watching this one. Hopefully it was kind of a quick one. And yeah, a lot more to come on the 66 F250. The Saratoga is still in surgery. We've got them piling up. We got the 50 Chevy. We've got lots to do. It's the winter's time. That's enough of me rambling on. I'm done for today. Thanks for watching. Appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see you on the next one.